Carlton King is a former Scotland Yard Special Branch and MI6 officer and the author of Black Ops.
I was undercover for Special Branch in jihadi organisation. For more than a quarter of a century, I was a member of Her Majesty's Secret Intelligence Service.
This conversation between Carlton King and Mike Kilgannon is presented in two parts. This is part 2. Last week we released part 1. Make sure that you're all caught up on that. Take it away, Carlton and Mike.
My name is Carlton King, and my job is to lift the shadows off the world of secret intelligence, national security, and armed governmental personal protection. Today, the name is Mike Kilgannon. Don't forget it. Businessman, entrepreneur. People in the know will know who he is. For us normal folk, as are outsiders, he's known in his world, but he's not known generally outside his world. And he's probably affected your life, even though you don't know it.
I know you're very forthright and you are principled on Brexit. You predicted some of the things it would do, and this is the way I look at Brexit. Okay, so we're talking about something that happened before a lot of people who voted. None of us really understand the full spectrum of it. So what I would have done if I'd have been in power, I'd have kept it really simple. I'd have said, look, we've got a lot of major issues with being in Europe and the money. What do people really understand about it? What's the most touching them every day, but they don't realise things? And what I would have done is I would have said, I'll tell you what, I'm going to put you in a test environment, a POC, where the 4 most important things that happen because of Brexit, we'll try. And then if you like it, we'll carry on. So from Monday, you can't move into Europe freely as a person. Your traffic can't. You can't bring anything. And then suddenly, people would have seen that the 4 or 5 things that they take for granted by me are removed.
Correct.
Not let's vote on it, because 9,999 things that are happening, we don't know. Banking, obviously. So what we didn't do, and maybe it's because I've come from technology where you have to try something or take it away to understand the impact of it. So I keep it simple. Everything is the human user interface. So the human user interface of Brexit is I can go and live in Spain. I can drive to Spain. That's gone now.
Yeah.
That's the only thing that matters. So straight away, let's say they tried that for 6 months. Yeah. I put £2 on, the vote would be different.
But you see, you and I both know, Mike, that what they told people, what they sold the average person was that Britain doesn't look like Britain anymore. And it's because of Europe. Now, what they didn't explain was the people that they think that doesn't look like Britain anymore, because let's call a spade a spade. You look down your street, and if a bloke's a Polish fella, you can't see whether he's a Polish fella or not. You can't see that because he just looks like the average Brit, right? You can see if a fella is of Pakistani heritage or like me, of West Indian heritage, who, by the way, for 400 years have been British. So the point is, moving you out of Europe is not going to stop me coming into the United Kingdom. But that's what they were selling people. So I'm going to stop the Indian coming. That's what they were selling people. So they sold people a dream. Now, they also sold people on the issue of, and this is where politicians have a problem. I remember seeing Cameron, who, as you know, was for Remain. But I remember him sat there with a whole load of minis around him. And they all have the Union flag on top of them and all the rest of it. And he was talking about how Britain's doing well in the European Union. What he didn't say is, and I should say, Farage is saying, the Germans will still want to sell their BMWs into Britain and all this sort of business. Yeah. So they won't do anything. But we can sell our cars abroad so we don't need them. What Cameron never said, and this is where politicians have a problem, Cameron never said we don't have a car industry. What we have in Britain is basically an industry where foreign cars, many of them from the European Union, like the Mini, which is BMW, Rolls-Royce, which is Daimler, whatever, all these cars, like Vauxhall, which is, at that time, it was a PSA group, which is French. Yeah. These companies can move their factories out of Britain at a moment's notice. The Japanese companies that are making their cars here were only here because they had free access into the European Union. Now, the government's done a backdoor deal with them since to pay them X amount of money, and nobody's telling us what that money is, but it's going to be billions, if not a trillion, to stay in Britain, and to produce their cars. but the government's paying them to do that way more than what it would have cost us to pay to be in Europe. But they didn't tell you that.
I think what we've got to be cautious is, you're like me, you're a normal guy who's living an extraordinary life. And I've had access to things that go on because I've been in the technologies and I can see the energy you can. You've had extraordinary information because of your role. So your comprehension and understanding isn't any different from one. You've just got more data sets. So when you process the decision, you have got, most people get 1 to 4 normal data sets that they live their life on, the family, the telly, and that's good. You've got 600 data sets at a very high level. So your decisions are based on analytical facts, information people can't process. Similar to mine, that's why I've seen the polar opposite of yours, but from a data perspective. So they're making these decisions based on an algorithm. So to me, it's just content. Is it they're chasing them down security risk? It's the same algorithms, just the content's different. So when you talk to me, I say, I know the guy who wrote the algorithm, but just put the content in. Yeah, it's just content to me. Yeah. So I think where we are in the world is simplistic in that most people live their lives happily, but some of the information they get given, and I'm got a fraction of the information that you've got access to, and I'm in awe when I listen to you speak, because I understand you're talking about fact because you've been sat next to clever people and seen. Most people never see that. They don't actually believe it goes on. But the one thing I've learned is they're just people. You're not born as a leader. They're just people who are put into extraordinary positions. So when they get there, and I think we saw it, I laughed when Cummins put a picture up of Boris and it was an A4 board about how he was doing. But how do they think these things get done? I've seen what PayPal looked like on Facebook and they were on a board. So that's just an act of, look at me, do you not know this? Hang on, but I've seen all the world's top techies and got whiteboarding and blue sky. We have a board and we take a picture and then we keep that picture and we take a. And the thing is with it, what COVID is, no one knew how to deal with it. What they did is they invented something and they've had to scrub stuff off and put it on. Of course, you were going to get it wrong because you weren't touching the street. You were going global. It's impossible not to get it wrong. It's just impossible, isn't it? Yeah. So I think what I'm saying, just rewinding things to a very base level, the access to knowledge helps you make decisions. And if you've only got a few pieces of knowledge, the decisions you make are right. It's just you've not got enough information. And that's probably what I was trying to say. If I would have been in power, I would have taken the 4 most important things that Brexit does to people, what they understand. That is what it means to you. Because let's be honest, this is what's really happened in my world. We won a world war and we sat all these people down and we said, you owe us billions of pounds. But what we'll do is we'll send all our world-class engineers over. We'll teach you how to make stuff and then you'll become our competitor. What's that about? We've then controlled it for years. We've voted ourselves as Europe and we've made Germany the hub of banking. So we've just empowered who's our enemy to control money. So all I'm saying is but that's me because I just have information where I can think, hang on, what's going on here? We've just, for years we're trying to stop them. We've just empowered them.
And you're not wrong because, and that was my biggest argument.
Yeah.
My biggest argument, Brexit, albeit I'm a European Union Europhile, I'll put my hands up to that, is I'm a Europhile purely simply because you've got 28 countries that you can go and live in. You are will. No, nobody could stop you. That's the beauty of that. Nobody could stop you. You were a citizen of those countries. Nobody could stop you. So at your will tomorrow, you could say, you know what, I'm not making it in Britain. I'm going to go and live in Germany tomorrow. That was fantastic. What an opportunity. And it didn't matter that I'd messed up and had a criminal record in Britain. By the way, that's another factor. I used to say people, a third of Brits have a criminal record. What Mrs. Patel said, Priti Patel, she said, we're not going to let criminals into Britain. So what are the EU going to do? They're going to be exactly reciprocal. So what you're going to find in about 6 months' time, not now because COVID's still on, is mum and dad, bucket and spade, landing in Spain, and the Spanish Policía Nacional, that will be, or Guardia Civil, depending on whereabouts they land, is going to go and turn around and say, sorry, mate, you're not coming in because you did 3 years in prison, mate. Or you had a suspended sentence for 5 years on first instance. That's you done. Because they've still got the records from when we were freely moving records around. Do you get what I'm saying? Yeah. Freedom of movement of records movement will have gone, which is another bad thing for us. That 28/7 will still have those records so they can see people moving about, but we won't because we're no longer access to their systems. But they've still got the other systems, so they'll know who's got a record from that. Sorry, mate, you're not coming in. Your wife can come in and the kids, as long as they pay for their visa fees. Yeah, you see what I'm saying? Now you need to pay visa fees. So all those issues, that's what should have been, as you rightly said, that's what should have been said to people. People should have, you cannot bring back as much wine as you like. Under the European Union regulations, you could bring back literally a 40-ton truck worth of wine as long as it was for personal use. And nobody could stop you. Nobody could stop you. We tried to spin it. I was laughing the other day. Government said, we've got the best duty-free allowance going, 24 bottles. Now you can only bring back 24 bottles before you get duty paid. Now, these are the things that would have made people understand. Think, well, hold on, we've been done over here. But no, that never came out. Why? You ask yourself why. That's what you've got to ask yourself. Why?
Do you know why I keep it really simple? I've had some great mentors in my life. And if you enter a learning mechanic today, but someone's been doing it 40 years, it's impossible for you to catch up. All you can do is learn what they do today. So we've had a system that has so many rules and regulations that's been in place, 60 years, 70 years. All that it is when we removed it, we just took it on a decision. I was so confused by it, I didn't vote because I thought, hang on, there's not enough information here. And I totally support that people went out and made a vote. What I'm probably trying to say is they should have made it easier to understand to them the human interface, the human reality of what that meant. Now, I was on a project by an American who put £50 million into a new form of banking, which was based on your data, which would have opened up lending into levels that we'd never seen. It would have powered this economy and been based here, would have made us a global superpower in banking. And we were a week away from launching. And when Brexit, which all his analysts said wouldn't get passed. He had another 200 million to put in it. The week before we were going live, he pulled it. Brexit voted us out. It's like you're saying, he just pulled out. Because what he was going to do is make it a British banking system, an evolution in British banking to make people's data an important part of lending, make it dead clean and honest, and we would have been a global superpower beyond Facebook, beyond predictions, because ours would have been the banking system of the future. But obviously, I'm talking to you, no one knows what it is. There's just me and you and about 10 core techies. But that's what I saw. We could have changed the world if 20 more people had voted. But even I didn't think would come out. But I bet you there was 50 other things that would have gone that we were developing.
I'm going to have to bring you back, Mike, because this is so interesting. I'm going to have to bring you back. But let's put it on one thing that people never thought of. Okay. When we were part of the European Union, we didn't need to spy on our European colleagues, right? Because we're part of the European Union. We had European Union people working, a good friend of mine, in fact, a German guy and his missus, they were working in Britain in our foreign office, right? Just sent over. And we, unfortunately, because we don't have the foreign language speakers, we weren't sending many to their countries, such as Spain or wherever, because unfortunately, Brits tend not to be good at language. We just didn't have those who were doing the same. I was in the European liaison section where I'd speak with my German colleagues in German, they speak in English. We've always, or my Dutch friend, I speak with them in Dutch, whatever. And we do that. And that gave us a fantastic movement of intelligence in the secret world without having to go through commissions rogatoire and all those sort of things that you have to go through in general policing, which you use Interpol for, which, by the way, isn't a police thing. It's a police movement system. It's not its own an agency, but a movement system. And it takes a long time. So if you've got that knowledge, and we, would have people stationed in Germany or wherever else, that's great. That's fantastic. You've got that freedom. The problem now is, mate, that now, and the reason why I'm saying this, because you mentioned it, now we're back to being competitors. And as you know, I work for MI6 as well. And every external agency, like the CIA, MI6, or French agencies, or the German agencies, Nachrichtendienst, every agency, like every foreign agency like that, one of the elements of their role is called the economic well-being of their country. So in our case, the economic well-being of the United Kingdom. Right? That's your job. Well, if you've got a competitor, right, the economic well-being of your country has to look at what the competitor's doing. Do you get what I'm saying? That makes you then have to see what your competitor's doing. And for most Europeans, the reason why they built the European Union was so they'd never fight and kill each other. 100 million people dead in the Second World War, started out of Europe, like 50 million dead in Europe. They didn't want that to happen again. And they really feel that. 7 million German dead means something. We lost in that Second World War 450,000 to 500,000 people. Germans lost 7 million. And if you add in civvies, probably even more. They don't want those dead. You get what I'm saying? So that's why their perspective is different than ours. We never had that.
I think just to go back on that, and I know it's far beyond me, but some of the great mentors I've had, they always reverse engineer things. So just go back and use modern technology in an old setting. Now, some of them have been back to these wars and they've looked at the numbers. And the reality of it is, as a PR exercise, we did win the war, but the reality of it is we just publicised it the best. The real numbers, and we have analytics and things like that. Some of the other parties could already crush the Germans before we got there. We just finished it off. And of course, because Winston was there, the best PR machine of that war, he rolled that. But if the analytics of things existed then, the reality of it is the statisticians would have said, no, it was won at 447 when we killed 6,200,000 Germans, and it was actually a Turkish guy who did it, or that. All that happened is because we were flowing the information to London, we publicised it. So it doesn't matter what you say, if you are going to a statistical fact, we weren't in a nuclear war, we were in a war where weapons were involved, so manpower can't be overpowered. So we didn't have the manpower of some of the other nations, and without them, the Germans would have crushed us, because if they'd have been able to keep bombing and attacking us as an island without that barrier in front, they'd just cut off our supplies. So it's just because statistically, there was no statistics, it was just written down, wasn't it? Winston Churchill Webb at the time, wouldn't it?
I mean, the empire, see, it always amazed me if they say we stood alone in the war. No, at the time of the Second World War, when we declared it, and the famous speech says, the United Kingdom, an empire is now at war. That's what Chamberlain says. The empire, and not a lot of people know this. They see the red on the map, but they don't really get the perspective. It's 1/3, repeat, 1/3 of mankind.
The empire.
Right? 1/3 of every person who lives on this planet was under British control. And all those people were at war. Every one of them. Yeah. More than 1/3 of the landmass of the world. And all of the wealth from those places, and my father was one of those, and I'm going to come to that before we leave on this, because your father was one of those, from one of the earliest parts of empire, from Ireland, yeah?
Yeah.
So my father was one of those who was going through the Atlantic when German submarines were sinking ships every 2 seconds from 1940 onwards, all the way through to the end of the war. He's lucky to be alive. And he was just one of a whole load of colonial people who were fighting for what they called in those days the mother country, because they were all British.
Or they called now, because I'm just on a project with the Chinese, they call them British national.
And also,
that's what they are.
All those people were fighting for the United Kingdom on the side of Britain and losing their lives for it. Now, unfortunately, as you rightly said, we haven't supplied that information. And as for winning the Second World War, the two countries that lost the most people, China, nobody ever thinks of, lost 30 million people in the Second World War, and the Soviet Union lost, some people say 25, other people say 30, other people say 45. Who knows how many people, and that's million, by the way, who knows how many of those people died in reality. It's an incredible amount of people. But what we do know is they bled out the Germans. Of the 7 million German dead, 6 million of them die on the Eastern Front, fighting the Soviets.
Yeah.
So they bled them out. So that's the reality of war. And when you're in my game, you study that, you understand that, you see that. You have to see what the reality is of it.
Okay.
So before we go there, I just want to get to your background. And a lot of people out there will be saying, how the hell did you make it to this? Where did you come from? What did your parents do? What did you do to get to where you got to?
My father was a priest, came from out of the potato famine, fell of love with the church for simple reasons. He liked having sex with women. No, like he said, we're modern men. Maybe he's got something right. We could be priests, but we can get married, can't we? So he was tortured because, he believed in religion, but he wanted to be a Catholic priest, but the religion wouldn't update.
Correct. Sorry to cut in. We all know that. They just pretended they didn't. Because what they were trying to say is the greatest thing to man is to override the sexual feeling which he has, because, of course, that's what, makes new people. You were special. So that's all they brought it in for. But the reality was they didn't keep that. The man obviously was a man of principle and thought, well, if I'm going to do that, I'm not going to have my housekeeper like most of them had. I'm going to make it open. So, yeah.
It's a normal upbringing, but see, normal then isn't like normal now. So, of course, he was strict. My dad, he was Irish. A lot of his friends were Irish. So, obviously, I'm half Irish. But people forget in the 70s, they would stone you for being Irish.
Yep.
They were throwing petrol bombs in. Kids at Christmas nearly getting burnt to death. The Irish were popular. And the reality of it is, I was lucky that there was only one Irish lad and one coloured lad. That's it. He was called Adrian Big. Sadly, he died about 1819. He had an embolism. He just walked in and revived. But we were the only unique people there.
Yeah.
You were in school. So it's like you're saying. So it was just that, luckily.
Did you see any of the signs? I saw when I was a kid, no blacks, no Irish, no dogs.
Yeah, of course we did. Well, at school, because I was integrated and because I was academic and I was a good sportsman, children don't bother, but my father had it. Children are neutral, but I saw it and wouldn't, had his own businesses. They wouldn't do business with him. Whenever there was a bombing or something, there'd be little comments made. he didn't feel comfortable unless he was going out to places where the Irish were there. But my childhood, my dad had a lot of issues. He was an alcoholic, but that's just who they are. There were things to go on, but I say to people nowadays, what you regard as abuse or what you regard as, oh, I've got to get this up, that was life. My dad and my mum, they were products of the war, weren't they? They'd come out from having no money. They'd had a rough childhood, so all they knew is what we had. So we were loved. We had challenges, but my dad was one for books. As long as you had a good report and you were doing things, but it was harsh. It was the iron fist, because at the end of the day, if I didn't do my homework, it doesn't matter what sport, I wasn't going anywhere. If he went to school and there wasn't all A's, there was a problem. But at least I knew where I stood.
Yeah,
perfect. Yeah, but that stood me in good stead. And there's been times when I wasn't friendly with him when he died. I went to say goodbye to him. He had cancer, and he was honest because he'd made some mistakes. He'd left my mum. He was very wealthy, my dad, but when he went on the charge with these young women. So when he was dying, my wife told me to go at the time. I didn't want to go, but I went. And it was really simple. Why did you do it? Well, you've left my mum. I always had a good job anyway, but I get you left mum, but why didn't you give her what she'd worked for, her inheritance, And I always remember, I've cried since. He looked me in the eye. He knew he was dying. He had hours to live. He said, I won't lie to you. He said, I did it because I did it for me and I wanted to do it. I wasn't thinking about you. And I enjoyed it. So I walked away, and years ago I thought, well, he could have lied, couldn't he, in that?
Yeah, good. Yeah.
I didn't get that at the time, but he just said, look, I wasn't thinking about you. This was my life. I wanted to do it. He owned it. He didn't try and mitigate it. He owned it. He could have said anything. He was on drugs and everything because he was in so much pain. But at the time, I didn't get it. But as I've got, he owned it. And I get that. Because how many people go in front of a judge and don't own it?
Very true, mate. Very, very true.
Yeah.
I'm a little bit sad for you on that, because my childhood was very good in many ways. Mum and dad were together and stayed that way. Ups and downs, as everybody does have. Never really saw them argue ever, to be quite truthful. The old man was life of the party, soul of the thing, great guy. And we had that, we got a work ethic from him, like you did, like you did. You got a work ethic from the old man, even though he did something different. And I can say the pressures could weigh on him of living a life whereby he was perceived as the enemy, because that's basically Irish, perceived as the enemy. So I could say that could hit him. But I love the bit where you said he owned it, because he didn't hide anything, did he then?
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah, he was happy. I realised after that he decided that's what he wanted. And I can look at it as an older man. In his 50s, he was drinking. He'd left my mum for much older women. I mean, I'm in my 50s. I'm happily married. I've got normality. I've got a family life. But what I'm saying is, he'd said when he was much younger that the honesty of it is that I'm telling a lie, saying I haven't got any sexual desires because I'm a priest. But he didn't come away from, you don't really have a lot of Church of England Catholic. He said, I'll either be a Catholic priest in denial or I'll just be a Catholic ex-priest. You know what I'm saying? So that's what he did. So he just got on with his life. And I can honestly say, if he was here now, I would, because I'm older and wiser, I would actually have said, he's definitely not something that I believe is right, but at least he'd been honest enough to own it.
Yeah.
And it's his life. He died and lived as he wanted, didn't he? We all do things that hurt people. Absolutely. As we make a decision. So I think what I've learned from him, this is what his greatest thing was. We've all got a devil on our shoulder. We've all got an angel. Live in the moment and don't worry. This is what he said to me, Dad. He said, when you're bad or when you're being good, the devil goes for a drink and a sandwich. Yeah, because you're being good. But when you're bad, he said, the angel is watching through one eye because he's thinking, crikey, I wish I could have a go at that. That's how my dad used to live. That's where he used to live. And I get it now. You just lived in the moment, didn't it? So we can all be good. We can all be bad. Don't overthink it. It's just life.
Two things. One is, have you got anything in the pipeline coming up which you are working on now? Because, you're a master of making things happen. So I guess you got something going. And secondly, have you any questions for me?
I think the first thing I would like to ask you, because I have got something, but I can't go into detail, but I'll tell that after it. What I believe with you is that after everything you've seen and done, which a lot of people don't really understand, and I don't, I'm just more aware of it, is were the moments when you were doing what you had to do that you thought, why me, or why am I here?
Yeah, I tell you what there were. There were moments when I've wondered whether the decisions were right that the system was maybe making, and whether I was right with the system for those decisions. Did you get what I mean? So
I get what you're saying, Ian.
Yeah. So
you were the conduit, weren't you? You were the conduit.
Yeah, you were the. I'm doing it. Sometimes the conduit, sometimes I was doing stuff, and so you're doing stuff. And sometimes I'm thinking to myself, is this the best way of doing this? I guess I could always say to myself, generally, see, I believed that I was saving lives and keeping people safe in most of the things I was doing. In fact, to be truthful in everything I was doing, I don't believe in the house on the White House on the hill and everybody's a goodie, because they're not. Because I can tell you that our perspective sometimes, when I say our nation's perspective sometimes is bad. Yeah. And sometimes our nation's perspective was good. But I guess what I'm saying is that most of the time, if I had to balance it, I'd say our nation's perspective was good. So I was happy to do the goodness because the nation's in the end.
So what you're saying is my dad lived. You've got a devil and an angel. Sometimes you have to do what the devil wants.
Well, I guess what I'm saying is count me now as the nation whom I'm working for. I'm saying, on this occasion, the nation's probably doing the right thing. And I'm its conduit. I'm the guy who's doing the nation's bidding, if you get what I'm saying. So that's that. Yeah. And otherwise, why me? I'm going to be like your dad. I can't say that I didn't want to be the person doing it. I wanted to be that person. I strive to be the best person. I wanted to be the person who, like you, and I guess you can understand this a little bit better than many, being a working class black person, this world was not open to me. So once I got to this world, which I could never have dreamt about when I was a kid growing up, I saw all the programs and would have wished to have wanted to be it, James Bond or whatever, but I never really dreamt of that because it's not open to me. You just wouldn't get such a guy doing that. So when I could do that, for me, I was proud to do that. Do you get what I'm saying?
And there's a reason I ask you that. I don't really do leadership roles. I've been third and fourth in charge, but other people are better up front than me. Well, then it's more natural for them. Yeah. And they like being CEO. So I've just fallen into something which I really believe in. I think there are lots of different ways that people are going to have to accept that COVID is here. Yeah. And just something's come along where they've all turned around and they said, Mike, there's only you can lead this.
So let me get this right. So what you're telling me now is you're working on some COVID-connected system.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm lucky, aren't I? Because I've spent 3 years in the NHS and in innovation and seen how they've coped with these things. Yeah. So I think what I was saying earlier discreetly is the way people make decisions on their health is going to change. What the NHS are going to empower you to do is stay healthier longer so you don't go in the NHS. But the reason is they want you working because you've got a massive debt that's bigger than you want. So there is an economic reason that if you're fit and healthy, you can be more productive. Yeah. I think what I've seen, and there's about 20 of these different ideas, is there's some software and ideas that are going to make you make decisions about, do I want to go to that place? Or it's just information and systems that are there. They're just going to aggregate it, not aggravate it. So there's just one thing I'm on. It's just an aggregation of systems, and it's just going to make it a little bit easier for people to. So there's just one thing I'm on. It's just an aggregation of systems, and it's just going to make it a little bit easier for people to think, if I go there, before I go there, they'd like me to wear my mask. Yeah, because what I've learned and what people are missing in a human relationship and a human transactional relationship, there's you as a consumer, but there's me as a staff, isn't there? So when you go into a restaurant, you might, you don't wear your mask, that's fine. But what happens if you have got COVID and the girl that is serving you, you pass it to her and she's got an underlying condition, you might as well have stabbed her. And this is the problem, that because I'm on both sides, I myself can't tell you whether it's here, it's not going to be, but I'm just thinking sometimes we've got a little bit on, I'm a consumer. And if you're touching a digital device in your own home, that's fine. But you're person to person, that human being's got the same risks as you. So it's that little bit of courtesy that when I go there, that person who's doing a job, they're a key worker. I think what it is, it's a series of things. We're going to call it the 7 pillars of safety. And I think you'll like it when you see it. And I'm hoping that you will want to join us if you want to join us. That's the reason for my call. Because I think that you bring a lot of expertise. Because I've got a lot of professional medics and pandemic experts and health and safety experts. But I think what they need is the bit of Carlton understanding of state security, protecting assets. The assets in this are people. Yeah. So workers aren't. This is how I look at it. When the policeman's out on the road, if someone runs at you with a knife, you expect a policeman, don't you, to come in front of you. Now, in some states, that guy's armed. In this country, he's not. So his bravery is commitment to his job. But in the pandemic, we've expected a doctor, a nurse, a paramedic, the guy who serves you at McDonald's. They're key workers, aren't they? Because they've kept it going. But they're the ones at risk because the pandemic is a biological weapon. Even if it wasn't made as a biological weapon, it's a biological thing that can hurt you, isn't it? This is what I'm trying to achieve. And there's lots of different schemes. It's not enforced. It's just about human beings thinking, hang on, it's not about me consuming. Well, what about the person that's helping me consume that cup of coffee, parcel? Am I putting them at risk? It's a little bit of a conscience system. It's a bit of self-regulation because what they're missing is it goes human to human. It's not, I'm touching the screen. I could have it without realising and I could pass it on to someone who could go home and give it to the grandma, because that's what's happening. No matter what we say, if you're young and fit, you can have the pandemic and walk around forever and never take a test. But you might give it to someone whose grandma can't survive it. You don't even mean to give it to them, but that's the thing with these invisible things. You don't realise. In fact, it's more honest if you've got a gun, isn't it? I'm going to shoot you. But the pandemic. So all I'm saying is I don't think pandemics are going to go away. I think we're going to have numerous pandemics forever. And the way I'm looking at what I want, and again, I'll talk to you off recording because I would find it a great honour if you would help us. And I'm not saying it'll be a success. I just think if a few people adopted it, it'll give people a standard bearer. It's just, yes, you don't have to do anything, do what you want, but just be a little bit more cautious that you not doing anything might expose a person who's a key worker just doing the job to hurt someone in the family. You're not doing it nastily. I'm not saying I'm the same. I don't wear masks some days, but if the NHS have no choice, I have to, yeah. It's just that, hang on, just have a little think for a minute because you might not know you've got COVID, yeah?
You're basically saying you're going to put together, and obviously
it'll be software.
Put together something that will make people consider their fellow human being.
Yes. That's all.
I'm going to have to leave it there, my good friend. That's great. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you very much for your honesty, your funniness on occasions, your time with us. And to my listeners, once again, thank you very much for all your time. Remember, you can get in touch with me on the Black Spy podcast website. You can also use any of the Carlton King social media platforms and Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, whatever. And if you want to know more about me, you can read my book, which was basically called Black Ops, The Incredible True Story of a British Secret Agent. I hope you'll find that a good read, and I'll see you next week.
Thank you, Carl. Look forward to speaking to you again.
Thank you very much.
Carlton King is a real-life working-class spy, bringing you the details, the stories, and secrets from his life spent spying. Give us a 5-star rating on Apple iTunes, and don't forget to subscribe so you never miss any of the excitement. This is for your ears only. This podcast was produced by a podcast company. If you need help with your podcast, simply visit apodcastcompany.com or email jason@apodcastcompany.com.
My name's Carlton King, and I'm an ex-spy.